The government has rejected an offer from China to join hands in the face of the Trump administration's tariffs. Foreign Affairs reporter Stephen Jedgetts joins us now from Parliament House in Canberra. Stephen, what has China told Australia and what has the government said in response?
Yeah, Dan, this was an op-ed piece written by Xiao Chen, the Chinese ambassador to Australia, published this morning in the wake of some of the chaos that we've seen out of Washington. And of course, most recently, the upheaval we've seen with Donald Trump effectively pausing tariffs for 90 days. All of this, of course, has generated enormous uncertainty in Canberra, as well as a measure of resentment towards the US administration. And China, perhaps unsurprisingly, is keen to capitalise on that. Now, in this op-ed piece, the ambassador says that China and Australia should, quote, join hands together and also with countries around the west of the world to reject the path that the US is taking and to push back against this global regime of tariffs. Now, he doesn't spell out exactly how Australia and China should join hands, but he seems to be arguing that perhaps they should look at doing things together in either the multilateral space, so perhaps working together at the UN or the WTO, even though that might not be very useful, to try and put pressure on the US, or perhaps even just working together politically to make it clear that what the US is doing is unacceptable. Now, the government has responded pretty coolly, it has to be said. Richard Marles was asked directly this morning, do you want to hold hands with China? And his response was, no, we won't be holding hands with China. He says instead, Australia is focused on diversifying trade away from the two great powers who are increasingly being caught up in what looks like an all-out trade war and trying to build markets in other parts of the world. Let's take a listen to what Richard Marles had to say.
We are focused on building markets and diversifying our trade, as I said. And, you know, we've done a lot more in Southeast Asia, for example, with countries like Indonesia, which is, you know, a massive market that's going to grow right next to us. We're about to sign a new trade agreement with India, which is the biggest country in the world now. We've done a trade agreement with the UAE, which is really the gateway to the Middle East, an important market for Australia. We've doubled our trade with the UK over the last 3 years. So we're focused on diversifying our trade, and yes, we've stabilised our relationship with China, and that's a good thing.
Stephen, what is it that's shaping the government's response here, as in why they're taking this particular stance?
Well, put simply, Dan, there's just no strategic trust between Australia and China. And we see that every day. We see that in the Pacific. We see that more recently with the Chinese flotilla circumnavigating most of Australia. And of course, the most powerful illustration of this for the government was what happened pretty much 5 years ago when China started its campaign of economic punishment against the then Morrison government in the wake of a political dispute between the two countries. All of that means is that while Australia is happy to increase trade with China on our terms and in sectors where we believe it's in our interests, we've got no interest being drawn into a Beijing-led bloc to try and confront the United States. Now, that doesn't mean that Australia won't be open to working with other partners to try and maximise leverage or pressure on Trump to try and get him to back down. But because there's little strategic trust between Australia and China, we're going to be very wary of any global efforts that are Chinese-led. So at the moment, there's a bit of a pox on both your houses sort of vibe coming from the government towards both Washington and Beijing. There's a sense that we have to look not to the major players, but to other close partners in this part of the world and in Europe to try and forge common ground. But of course, that is also easier said than done, because in the end, China still dominates as our #1 export market, and the US still retains unique leverage and power within Australia as by far and away our most powerful strategic and defence ally. So talking up third options is all well and good, but in the end, you still have to deal with the two big gorillas in the room.
Gorillas indeed. Foreign Affairs reporter Stephen Jedgetts reporting from Parliament House in Canberra.